So this next session is called This City Is Ours, the continuing evolution of City Studios. We're going to look at content creation and distribution and strategy at Manchester City, which makes a lot of sense seeing as we are here today. So joining me to do that are Gavin Johnson, who is at the far end. He is City Football Group's media director. John Caux, which rhymes with Graham Lasso. I had to ask that question. He's Manchester City's head of first team content, and Kimberley Walker-Jones, who's Manchester City's studio manager. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. Before we talk about the specifics of the content, as I like to do, I like to put this into some context and give you all a background as to where we are. So, Gavin, if I'd like to start with you, if I may, please. What is City Studios?
Yes, City Studios is three things. Firstly, it's around creativity. So creativity in terms of lots of creative talent that we have in the team, but also about a creative mindset that runs through the whole organisation. So the creativity doesn't just come from my team, it also, we encourage others around to contribute to that creativity. The second thing is around production resource and production talent. Obviously, two of the stars of the show are with me today in terms of the output that they're responsible for and they deliver. But it's around real production expertise from a whole lot of different backgrounds. Some people from broadcasts, some people from publishers, some people from creative agencies, media agencies, and so on. So it's making sure we have production talent who, some of them are generalists, but some of them are very much specialists as well. And the third one is around the facilities that we've got. So we've been very fortunate to invest in facilities over the last 2 to 3 years particularly, which is allowing us to create the content and have the success that we've been very fortunate to achieve.
Thank you. We'll go into that in some detail in a bit. But before we do, let's stick with the strategy side of things for now. What's the strategic vision for the Manchester City or the City Football Group's media output?
I think it's probably three things. You know, we see our responsibility to open a window up onto the club, to make sure that all of our fans can see things that they can't see anywhere else. We have amazing access to the players and to the staff across all the teams, the men's, the women's, and the younger teams as well. And that means that we can open that window up onto the club and give them insights around the club. And on the back of that, the second thing would be to entertain as well. And some of that entertain doesn't always mean to make them laugh. Sometimes we tell sad stories as well. But we're going to use entertainment to reach those fans and tell stories around individuals and stories around the clubs. And on the back of those two things, it allows us then to deepen the relationship that we have with our hardcore fan base and our current fan base, but also very actively we see content as a mechanism to reach new fans as well. And we've seen that acceleration on the back of the success we have on the pitch, but also we see it as all of our jobs to make sure that content is used to reach new fans all across the globe.
So that by reaching new fans, how does that support the City Football Group's wider goals then? So how is content helping those goals? What's the leap between the content and whether it's monetization or ticket sales, whatever it might be? How does it help those goals?
Yeah, I mean, the goals, obviously, it's our job to reach those fans and to grow the business fundamentally. I think the mindset that we have is that we want to punch above our weight, and that comes from, obviously, Manchester City have been hugely successful on the pitch, but I look after 13 clubs across the group, and so within those 13 clubs, if we can make each of them punch above their weight in terms of the content output versus what they did historically, that's our job. And I've got 3 examples of that: one in the US, one in Italy, and one back in Manchester. In Italy, we own a club called Palermo. And Palermo are fighting for the playoffs in Serie B, which is obviously the second league in Italy. And we're currently 9th, as of last weekend, in the league table. But we're number 1 in terms of the views and the engagements that we achieve for our content. So that's my team working with the guys in Palermo to make sure that they understand the latest trends, they have all the latest technology, and they've got the talent in that team to drive it. In the US, we own New York City FC, is one of our 13 clubs. And again, we launched City Studios there about 18 months ago. So more resource, got the company, got the business to really focus on what that is. And I think there is 30 teams in the MLS, so Major League Soccer's 30 teams. 25% of the views for all of the teams on YouTube comes from New York City FC. So even though it's one team out of 30, a quarter of the views come from the work there. And the final example is on the women's side in Manchester, where we took a strategic decision last summer to break out the content that we used to do just on the main channel, where all of our content for men's and women's on the main channel, and we launched an Instagram account and we launched a TikTok account. And so we worked very fast. We invested in a team there. And again, that's now bearing fruit, is that we're the last couple of months, we're number one WSL team in terms of the views that we're achieving on that content.
Thank you. Let's focus in on Manchester City for now. John, I'm going to come to you if I can. As head of first team content, first 11 content, what are you responsible for?
Yeah, so my role at City is to run a very small unit right in the heart of our first team elite sporting building, as it were, which is quite unique in terms of what a club's able to do. So our role as a unit is to film and ultimately distribute all content around our players on a daily basis. So that could be reels for Instagram and TikTok same day, but also cinematic film content like Together Treble Winners on Netflix, which was an industry first for something that a club's own production arm filmed and edited and produced in-house. So anything and everything really, using the sort of wider great Man City teams across social and Kimberley's live team to actually get the content out there. But our strategy is to have a very concentrated focus at that point of shooting to try and get players and try and get fans closer to players ultimately.
Thank you. There's a lot of content. So tell us a bit about your team and the scale of it.
So there's three of us in my particular team. We're all sort of cinematographers at heart, but part of our role, well, a big part of our role is diplomacy, politics, all that sort of thing to try and make sure that you're just getting the best content possible. And we get incredible access that way. It actually started through COVID, where we had to have a person, and I went in and spent a lot of time around the team. And I think the crucial thing now is we're seen by Pep and the management more as backroom staff than a content team. So just as they have a specialist medic, specialist chef, they see us as specialist videographers that can help with content, but can also help their own performance as well, which I think we'll come to.
Thank you. We can actually see a video now which gives us a bit of a flavour of this, can't we? So could we see the reel, please?
If we win the treble, yeah?
Yeah.
What are you going to do with that?
Surely you've got to go Netflix.
What say?
It's really cold.
We are here pre-game. How is that little toe?
And that level is that, my friends. That's why no one did 4 Premier Leagues in a row. That's the reason why it's so difficult.
Different grade, like Phil says.
A pleasure. At the top.
You're gonna congratulate me or what?
Right.
How was the hair?
Luxurious, mate.
I'm here to stay.
Let me go like this. What else? Then he did like this.
Top man. Simple as that. You got my bubble. Thank you, mate.
We're going to come back to Erling and his pants in a bit. John, there's an assumption, I think, that because you're Manchester City and you're part of a bigger group, you're able to throw buckets of money and cash at these kind of things. But how do you create your content? What are you capturing? And what are the important considerations, both creatively and in terms of the access?
So yeah, I think the big sort of change we've been able to do once we've had the trust to be in that scenario is that we don't throw people at it. We don't make it into a circus. We have to realise that it's still an elite environment, and I think managers and players in the past have been slightly scared of content because they see it as getting in the way, ultimately. So with us, we tend to self-shoot predominantly all ourselves. There was a chat with 360 cameras earlier, Insta360. We do a lot of that kind of stuff, but then also we use the Ronin 4D camera. We're using the Sony Burano as well. So we're able to sort of cover high-end 4K, but also immersive social stuff at the same time.
I think when we spoke in our call the other day, you mentioned also you changed the style of shooting to helps the players.
Yeah. Well, we found that, I think it was Ilkay Gundogan said to me once, I think the season of the treble winners, he says, the reason why it was so successful is because that we were invisible, and he saw us as just one of the guys, to one point where he sort of said to me, were you recording that? And I had to tell him yes. But I film everything very like underslung, as it were, just so that you can retain eye contact with these guys. And very subtle social things that you can do, like if we're filming within a rondos at training, for example, we can get right in there, but if a ball comes past us, we drop our camera, we go and get the ball and we throw it back. Little things like that. When you add it all up, they just think, oh yeah, they're not just content guys, they're here to help us out, and you get better content that way.
Thank you. Let's look at a couple of specific, put my teeth in, examples. Rodri being back on the grass was a huge story. Tell us a little bit about that particular bit of footage that you shot and how you used it.
Yeah, so again, part of the way that we fit in is that we're committed to the schedule, and the very hard schedule of Pep and the team. So we're there every minute of every day, ready to capture anything from Bernardo getting his new puppy delivered to Rodri getting back on the grass, which happened, right completely out of what I was expecting. The sun came out and he had a bit of a medical checkup and came and saw us and said, I'm going on the grass today. And I was like, okay, brilliant. Got my drone out, got the 4D out, got some stuff. And it just really worked because people loved it, because you're seeing the Ballon d'Or winner back there. We wouldn't have had time to A, find out it was happening, B, put the request in, C, get over there. But we're also able to share it. So we share a lot with broadcasters. So Sky Sports ran it, the BBC ran it as well. We provided clean footage to them as well. So we're not sort of keeping it all for ourselves. We're trying to get it to as many fans as possible across platforms.
Really interesting. The big Norwegian guy in his semi-naked state. So Erling Haaland signed a very long contract. Tell us a little bit about that, let's say, unique shoot for that particular story.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about Erling is that he's just a really lovely guy with lots of creative ideas, and he might be a superstar, but also he's fun. And I think that particular story, we'd done a lot of amazing high quality pieces for his contract extension, and Erling came to us the day before when it had snowed and said, I've got an idea. So I was like, okay, great. And he just goes, come to my house tomorrow morning. I'm going to sit in the field in the snow doing my pose in my pants. And we just went, all right then, sounds good to us. We'd never want to ask that through the official channels, but seeing as you've suggested it, happy days. So we went, filmed it here. You can see on the sort of cinematic Steadicam. Just one person was there at his house, and I think he really enjoyed it. And that was how he announced his contract on his own channels, so on Erling's Instagram. But then also we collaborated through the club as well.
Thank you. You mentioned earlier that you sometimes also create content that can help the team or the managers or the players themselves. Explain to me a bit more about that. How does that work?
Yeah, so I found that really interesting because I'm a football fan at heart, but I'm also a video tech geek, really. And luckily, Gav understands the value of content to know that some of my hours aren't spent always getting content out, but you're building on relationships and you're also helping the team as a whole. So we've been able to train up our analysts in the use of drones for training. They now have a live link to a big screen for some set pieces and things like that in some training sessions. So I help them with the technology around that. And also just in general, Pep's asked us to make a motivational video to show the players. Not this season, that's probably why, but I think it was the Liverpool game last season, we played one, and the players were able to see a video straight before the game in the dressing room that had their own families, that had them having fun together, bonding as a team. It's not always just about showing them, camera one broadcast. They really sort of, reacted well to that.
Great, thank you. One last question before I bring Kimberley in. It's fair to say you've got access to a lot of quite sensitive material and a lot of very, very famous people as well. Are there strict restrictions on what you can capture and, I guess more specifically, what you can eventually show?
Very little, to be honest with you. You'd expect there to be a lot more. I mean, you saw from that sizzle, but also if anyone's watched Treble Winners, that it's not just the high fives at the end of winning the league that we show. We show lots of very passionate and detailed team talks that give you an insight into the people behind these names, really. And so I've been really pleased with how very little is there. A lot of the stuff is making sure that you are letting everyone know, letting the players know that there are cameras there, for certain reasons, but we want to show them as immersive as possible. When it's a halftime team talk, for example, whoever's in there from our team actually sits in the seat of a player who's not playing that day or is away injured, to give that immersive view of, if I was a fan, this is an angle that you've never seen before, and they just accept the fact that you're there after a while, and that leads to the best stuff.
Fantastic, thank you, really interesting. It's not just solid post-produced content. There's a studio facility which has live content as well as recorded content. Kimberley, you're in charge of that. So tell us a bit about the in-house studio, how it's used, who uses it, and some of the examples, and then we'll show a little clip as well.
Yeah, basically, kind of like following on from what John said, really. I don't really think of our studio just as a broadcast facility. It's kind of like an enabler to establish the relationships and to grow the relationships, like John was saying, because without relationships and without getting these special relationships with the players, with our partners, you're not going to get the content. So no matter how great the studio is, you've got to have that relationship that they feel comfortable, that they know that they're going to deliver, and they see familiar faces. It's used quite a lot of times, like throughout the week. 71% in a month is actually non-live in the studio now. And players ask to use the studio, the manager asks to use the studio because they feel comfortable in there because, like John said, we're building those relationships. If you take a look at the VT, it'll show a range of what we've done just in the past 3 months.
Let's do that right now. Let's have a look at this sizzle, please.
Welcome to Match Day Live. It is a huge day in the Premier League today.
Looking forward to what's next and for the future.
are ready for the Club World Cup. I hope you are ready too.
It's quite a wide gambit, but let's focus just quickly just on the Ballon d'Or stuff for Rodri. Tell us about that, because that was quite an interesting little setup, wasn't it?
Yeah, so like I said, we only had a couple of days' notice really to gather all the content, and quite a few broadcasters, external broadcasters, wanted in on the action, which is absolutely, completely understandable. But because there was such demand, we kind of went as a team and we said, look, we could probably deliver that for you and you'll get more out of it. So we did the podcast with the Gary Lineker, we shot it, we recorded it, and we sent the footage to them. It was all completely for them, it wasn't even for our channels. And they were really happy with that. They just rocked up, did their podcast, because then we then struck down the set, moved Rodri to another side of the studio. He was then with another broadcaster doing an interview, went over to the other side, and we facilitated it all, so that because you've got a finite amount of time to get that much in, it's actually easier actually for us to facilitate it. Yeah. And like John said, we've already got the relationships with the players, so they feel more comfortable with us anyway. Yeah. And it's more beneficial for everybody, really.
You mentioned it feeling like a safe space, I think. What do you mean by that? For the players, I think you meant. Kind of
a safe space because, like John was saying, you begin to get relationships with them. So the location of the studio is amazing. It's one of the main benefits of the studio, to be fair.
Have we told the guys where this is, by the way?
It's right next, it's embedded into the first team. It's literally 30 seconds away. So the players can literally come off the pitch straight into the studio, and it's a controlled environment, so it's there specifically orientated towards media, so they know they're walking in, it's soundproofed, we shut the door, it's ready to go, it's always ready for when they walk in, they're not having to wait, you know, the microphone has already been tested, the lights have been preset, everything is ready for them to go, do their content, and then get home, which is what ultimately they want to do, because they're footballers, they're not actors, but they have this media content, but they're more relaxed because they already know us. Like, sometimes they'll pass the studio and they'll run in to get some water or something, and it's building relationships, and that's the key, really.
I know the answer to this question, but you must run a pretty tight ship to make this work. Am I right?
Yes, I'm quite strict. Yeah, actually, you have only got a certain amount of time with them, so we'll do a strict content plan and a running order, and I've got a little stopwatch and I'm not afraid to use it. So yeah, it's because you want to get the most out of that time with them, and there's a lot of different things. You know, you could be doing an official interview, then you're moving over to do the social media section, so you don't want to cut down on anybody's amount of time, so it's really important so that they can just swiftly move from section to section in the most efficient way, really.
Omar Mamouche, let's skip to Omar Mamouche. So, big signing this season with Manchester City. That had quite an impressive schedule. Tell us about that.
Yeah, because it was a January signing. I mean, we don't get a lot of heads up anyway, really, because of the way football is. But January signings are normally even more restrictive, and will it happen, will it not happen? So I think we only had like 24 hours to put a content plan together. Obviously, it's quite a big signing for our global audience. So we only had a very short period of time to come up with the content plan, to come up with ideas about how do we reach then a global audience. And then through the platforms, we reached 295 million views, and we only had 45 minutes in the studio and 15 minutes off-site.
Yeah. There's a little live VT video which we can show while we're asking the next question, which I should have asked for before, but we'll put it on because it gives you a flavour of the live stuff. Those figures, Gavin, 295 million views, is that what you said, Kimbers? Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
295 million views. Does that sort of justify the expenditure and the effort you're putting into this?
Yeah, I mean, the club wants a return on the investment, so whether it's paying the three of us or whether it's investing into the studio space, the club wants a return on the investment. As John said before, there's no open checkbook. We have to count every single penny that we invest into it. And there's sort of two main two or three main measurements that we look at. Number one, sometimes we generate revenue from it. We do have a City Plus, which is our OTT channel, which we generate revenue from, or social media ad revenue. We also generate revenue through branded content from our partners as well. But we look at video views to see how we're doing on that particular metric. Again, this season, it's not been as strong a season on the pitch for the men's team as we would like, but despite that, we are currently number one in terms of the video views that we've achieved in the Premier League. But I think probably the main metric, I think back in the day, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, everyone got obsessed by followers on social channels. I think most of the football clubs are maybe in the room that agree with me that's just not a metric that's important anymore. So we monitor views and engagements, but active users, that is a real key one for us. And again, in February, and on the back of a lot of the Marmouche and Kushinov signing as well, we had like 81 million active users on our channels, which again is the most in the Premier League. So despite not doing well on the pitch, it's people say, oh, it's great when you win Premier Leagues, but if you're not winning every week, it's still our job to be creative, have those high production standards, and make sure we deliver content which reaches as many people as possible.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? If you do, stick your hand up. I've got one more. There's one, I'm afraid that the light is shining in my eyes so bright, I have no idea who that is, but there's a gentleman in the back who'd like to ask a question.
Hello. I'm Jamie Aitchison from HBS. We're the host broadcaster of the Club World Cups. I'm sure we'll be seeing you in America. I wanted to ask, given that the club has struggled this season after many years of success, how much has that affected what you've done editorially, and how have you approached that, and have the players been less inclined to do stuff as a result?
Interesting.
I mean, the numbers are stacked up in terms of the audience numbers we've managed to achieve. We have to be careful around match days. You kind of, as soon as you win a game, everything flows from that, and there's multiple Instagram posts and tweets and TikToks and everything like that. So we do rein it back if there's a really bad result, because fans don't want to see it. I mean, in terms of the players, we have to be very careful, but I wouldn't say it's impacted us that badly, has it?
No, we do have to be careful, but at the same time, I've found that when I used to work in broadcast as well, you sort of hear that all the time, the post-match interviews were saying, it's the next game, it's the next game, it's the next game. That's the stock answer. I've found that is the case from being inside and being in the heart of it. These guys are incredible athletes, but they're also incredible in the way they can mentally reset, pick up the next tactics session, have some sleep, play in 2.5 days' time. So I think there's obviously a lot of noise on social around defeats and everything like that, but I think Pep's brilliant at it as well to make the players just concentrate just on the next one, because you can't dwell on it, can you? We all know that in any sport that we play. My golf is terrible now, but every time I think about the last shot, it's not going to be a good next shot.
Jamie, I hope that answers your question. Anybody else got a question? There's a gentleman down the front. Sorry, Rux, you're going to have to come a bit further down. Thank you.
Yeah, this is one sort of more relevant to the Treble Winners documentary. Obviously, before you decided to film that entire season, was there ever a point where you were thinking, like, obviously it worked out perfectly, did win the treble, got the Netflix, it got published on Netflix. Is there ever a case where you're thinking, if this doesn't play out the way you want to, how do you justify all of the time and the probably associated costs that go into making something so big scale?
It's a really good question. I think that's why it really helps that we have the daily content and the stuff that we do for players and staff. So it means that any footage that we get, regardless of winning the treble or not, is not sort of in vain. So one thing that I learned definitely that we implemented before that treble winning season was, if you film stuff in the best quality you possibly can, so if you film stuff in cinema 4K, for example, then you're covered if you win at the end of the season, but you're also covered to make a vertical clip that day, punch in and get it out on Insta. So there's definitely a part of you which is desperate for the team to win, because that means something that you might be doing long form actually has a home at the end of the season. But there's a lot of stuff you can do in the meantime.
I think also is interesting. So we lost to Chelsea in the Champions League final in 2012, 2021, and there's footage from the dressing room, which I think you filmed, didn't you? Which we just couldn't use at the time. It was like a bit of trauma because we'd lost the game we were going to win. We actually used that footage. Is it in last season or the season before? Of Pep in the dressing. No, it was Pep talking about how he'd approached the team at half-time in that Champions League final when we were 1-0 down. Havertz had scored in the first half. And we asked Pep the question in the treble year, did you react very differently for that game against Inter Milan in Istanbul? And he gave a great answer. I'd learned from my mistakes, essentially, what he was saying in 2021. So even though we'd sat on that content for 2.5 years, we could eventually use it. So, some things, like 98% of anything the guys ever record ends up on the cutting room floor or never gets seen. So we always bank stuff and keep it in case of a certain point where we'll need it.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Any other questions from the audience? I have a couple more myself. Ian is waving frantically. Ian supports Leeds, by the way. If there's any context to this question.
I was thinking of a sneaky third question about that. But first question for John, if you'll permit me. When you press the button to start shooting something, do you have a destination for that bit of footage at the time, or are you capturing it and then repurposing it for channels afterwards?
That's a very good question. So really, to be honest with you, I see myself as the football fan in the middle of somewhere that I shouldn't be. And I absolutely love it, and I know that fans would love it. So I hit record and I creatively try and capture whatever's happening from as many angles as possible. One thing that is crucial that separates my area of the business with Kimberley's, for example, is that when you're with a player on a Tuesday morning after they've just either won or lost, they don't want to be stopped in the corridor and asked if they like ketchup or mayo or anything like that, where you stop them and ask them something. I see that as a line that I don't cross. So we're capturing what they're doing anyway every day. A lot of that is quite repetitive, but you can film it in different ways, and then you still stay energized as a filmmaker.
Cheers. Can I have a quick supplementary?
Very quick.
This one's for Gavin. Is there any part of your remit which is promoting the group to all the fans, or are you focused on promoting City to City fans, Palermo to Palermo fans, etc.?
Yeah, very much the second. We never talk. CFG is not a public-facing fandom, if you like. There might be, certain fans who support New York City FC and Manchester City, but there's a whole lot of New York City FC fans who will be Liverpool fans. So no, we actually keep it delineated, but we just try to share the learnings that we have, in the biggest team with Manchester City, to make sure that, like I said before, the guys in Palermo or New York understand to reach them. But no, it's very much the latter.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Ian. Just one last thing before I let the guys go. The keen-eyed amongst you will notice there are cranes on the north stand. The redevelopment of the North Stand clearly is adding more seats or whatever, and etc. But is it providing any benefits for the media department or your team, Gavin?
Yeah, so the North Stand and the wider entertainment district, which will be named in due course, is a huge investment for the organisation. And part of the North Stand, Kimberley's going to have another studio to manage, which we're calling Studio 3, which will be right at the top of there, which again, that will, we hope, enhance our live output. And also, the other benefit is that actually it will give us another place where we can capture content, whether it's for partners or whether it's just normal kind of editorial stuff. The other benefit of obviously the location where we are, most of you will have walked past the Co-op Live, or at least you can see it as you walk to the Etihad. Because we're 50% owners of that, we have a big relationship with the guys at Co-op Live. So if, I don't know, Harry Styles is playing next year and someone wants to shoot an interview with him, Kimberley can facilitate that in the new studio. So as well as Erling Haaland, we're now servicing our mate Harry Styles as well.
Excellent. And on that bombshell, Kimberley, John, Gavin, thank you. Please join me in thanking the panel for their time.